All right, welcome to the show. So I'm here with Carina Guzman, the land development queen. Welcome, Carina.
Hello, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, what got you known as a land development queen, and then we can go from there. Tell us about your business and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here and be a part of your wonderful podcast. Just a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. I am an Ottawa-based land developer, Ottawa and surrounding areas. We began with transit-oriented developments, so that has been our bread and butter for many, many years, focusing around the new light rail system that Ottawa was putting in place. I know there's a lot of talks around that, but that's the wave that we rode for quite some time. And it was a great wave because it was brand new and it opened up a whole bunch of opportunities for us to grow into the land development space. That's actually how I first began this. I had seen a business journal in the Ottawa Business Journal, and it said, Ottawa is supportive of intensification around transit. And for me, that was like, bing, 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 bing. Here's an opportunity that nobody was really talking about. So I decided to take it on and just begin, because before that, I was just doing buy and hold, typical, real estate strategy. I wanted to up my game. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to do something more exciting. I was in the corporate world. But I did that on the side with the transit-oriented developments. And then we got into a variety of things, severances, land assemblies. We got into some upzoning and site plan applications. And we went into some 8-plexes, 12-plexes, 60-plexes. We're doing some mid-rise apartments as well. And then from there, I decided, you know what, let me take the journey a bit further now and go into some subdivisions. I have a really big passion for creating value in people's lives, finding ways to connect people more. That is my philosophy, is how can we have more connection with each other so that we can empower each other, we can create more business, more economy, we can reduce mental health. And I have children, so for me, it's a passion of mine to think about this generation and what we're going through and how we can help each other and grow, but also multiple generations to come and have more of a holistic view of having more fun in life together. That is my whole philosophy. So that's what we're doing now. We're really focused around subdivisions. The whole land development queen tagline, to your question, Sam, purely by coincidence. I decided to coach in the land development space purely because people were asking me for it. Before that, I was not coaching. And it's just one event that I attended. And, you take a picture with somebody at an event and then they tag you. And she wrote, the land development queen. And then from there on, everybody started tagging me that. So I thought, you know what? It's a great tagline. I love it. And I just accepted it and brought it on as one of my personas, I guess you could call it.
Thanks for sharing that. So there's obviously a ton to unpack there. So you started in the buy and hold as an investor. You moved into bigger and bigger projects. You mentioned that it also helped you up level your business game, and it also makes an impact on the future generations and bringing value. And you also mentioned too that you like to connect people and empower the next generation. Tell me where that shows up when it comes to, your business now and how land development plays into that, like when it comes to, that
Yeah,
future generation power.
it's literally the foundation of every single thing that I do. So for example, in my coaching business, I have a lot of students that are brand new to land development and they want to learn the ins and outs, but I also teach from experience. My whole entire coaching business is around my experience. And anybody who knows me as a coach, I give a lot of live examples, good, the bad. And the whole purpose of that is to learn from my mistakes. I want people to expedite their journey by learning from all of the mistakes that I've made. And it's really about empowering them to make the better decisions and giving them the tools necessary. So that's one way to empower people, is to teach them how to do it themselves, but also a lot more efficiently. And I just had a mastermind last night, actually. It's every 2 weeks we have a mastermind. And I had just gone, I'm going through an acquisition right now, but I have gone through so much learning experiences in the last 4 months of doing this acquisition that I just shared everything. It's all recorded, it's there, but it's all for them. And I find more often than not, people appreciate transparency. They appreciate being told the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, you know? And so that's one way. It's just, that's actually my giving back. It's a lot of my giving back to my students through me, but also like the the other purpose, the other reason why I decided to start teaching in this space, because honestly, Sam, like I'm not a teacher. Like teaching for me is, it was something I had to learn into. You know, some people are like really natural at just explaining things. For me, when you do it so often, you just have it in your head, you have it here, right? And it was very difficult for me to even explain, to verbalize a concept, because it's just something that I do every day. So kind of bringing that down and explaining it to somebody who's never heard of a concept before, it's in itself a skill set that you kind of have to learn. So, but I decided, if I'm going to teach, I'm going to teach it for the purpose of empowering people to really think about how to create designs, because we're not just talking about we're going to demolish and build something new. Yes, that is the whole point of land development, developing land, but in reality, there's so much more to that. If we are more intentional in what we do, we put more detail and emphasize on how can we make a design, how do we put together a community, how do we put together amenity spaces that can allow for people to communicate more, we can just heighten the entire experience for everybody involved. And that's actually my real mission, is to teach land development, but in reality, teach it in an intentional, holistic way, to show that in this industry of land development, there is more than just the numbers, than just the land. There is so much more that I don't think nobody ever really focuses on when we're talking about development of land. And if we can do that, that's my whole goal. If I can just have one person think about it in that way, I think we can really start to make a lot of change in people's lives.
It's incredible. So it seems like definitely picking up that it allows you to create a community, design a community, and connect and empower people, and creating more than just the numbers. It's really about empowering the next generation and creating this community within that, where they can communicate and they can have connections with each other, and just helping in general, just helping the population.
For
So
sure.
if someone's getting in, like let's say someone doesn't know anything about land development, I guess what are some maybe myths about land development? Why land development, and how does it really work? Like let's say someone just getting started or would like to know, is this for only builders, for example? Like what do you say about that?
Yeah. I think our space is still very gray area. And I think that's why a lot of people are scared to go into it. It's definitely a niche strategy in the real estate space that there's just not a lot of education around. There really isn't. I mean, some universities have construction courses and or development courses and that sort of thing, but it's one thing to your question. It's one thing to underwrite it properly. You have to be able to see the numbers and figure out, what can I get in this property, in this land, and is there enough upside for me to undertake this project? Because otherwise, nobody would do it. If you're going to lose your shirt over it, there's no way I would suggest anybody to do that. So that's number one. The basics is real estate 101. Buy it, and buy it so that the numbers make sense. That's number one. Obviously, the zone is a big component of it. Every single parcel of land has a zoning attached to it, is the definition of the land. And you have to figure out, based on the zoning, and that could be you and your architect or you and your planner, but figuring out what is the maximum highest and best use that I can utilize this property for. And if that doesn't allow for enough, is there a way to upzone that will allow me to do more? And of course, there's a lot of investigations that have to be put together. Not every land can be upzoned. The city has to have an appetite for it, or at least have an indication that they have an appetite for it. But there's a lot of due diligence that has to happen in order to make sure that you are going to be approved for that. And there's ways to do that, of course, as part of the whole putting something under contract and making sure that it's going to flow. And then there's the whole aspect of, okay, now I see this property, it has development potential. I think the numbers make sense. Now, is it going to work? You're going to do the due diligence and all that. And then figuring out how to capitalize it, how to capital stack it, and making sure that the capital stacking is going to allow you to do the exits that you want to do. And I always teach 3 exits minimum has to be a rule of thumb for any kind of development project. In fact, I think any project you should ideally have multiple exits on it.
Great.
And then just going through that process, right? It is a process that you have to go through in order to figure out, but it all really starts with the zone and what the city will allow to do on that property.
Okay, so highest and best use of the property with the planner to see if you can up zone or up level that property's density or what you could do there. You mentioned capital stacking. I'm going to ask you about what that is in a second. So this being a strategy that's sort of in a gray area, not a lot of people, some people are a little bit scared of it. Why should someone consider land development? I know there's a big impact on community. Are there myths that you're not able to get started, or you need a ton of capital, or you need to have a builder, dad who's a builder, for example, right? Like, what are some myths that you hear floating around, and what is capital stacking? Tell me what that means.
So to your first question, the reason why I think development is now becoming a popular topic, it seems like a lot of people are very interested in it. I think it's actually because a lot of markets, the traditional strategies no longer work. Like in Ottawa, and I think probably in your KWC, especially Waterloo, you're probably seeing that a BRRRR strategy really doesn't work very well anymore. SDU conversions, taking that bungalow and adding an SDU in the basement. Everybody and their grandmother was going after that bungalow at some time. You think 7 years ago, 8 years ago, everybody was doing that. The same with the semis. Everybody was going after that 50 by 100 lot to demolish that little crappy house that was on it and build the 2 semis with the SDU, right? So the 4-plex. I know multiple people that went after that. So these are the trends. These are like those trends that you see in the real estate world, and they no longer work. So now people are realizing, one, housing is an issue. We all know that there's not enough of it. Rents are going up. And in order to make certain markets work, you have to add more units. You have to be able to take what is there today and change it from something really low density, like a one little tiny house, to 30 units or something like that, just to make the numbers work, right? So I think that's why a lot of people are realizing that this is a strategy that still works in a lot of markets. It is still feasible, and especially with the whole Bill 23 coming into play, allowing more units in a much smaller condensed space. Also a lot of grants and a lot of reduction of development charges. Some municipalities are completely removing those, or reduction in permit fees and all that. CMHC financing, everybody's talking about that as well. So it's a culmination of a whole set of elements that are now combining, and everybody's kind of all of a sudden becoming aware of, oh, there's this whole opportunity here that I never even thought about. And now with all of this going on and my strategy no longer working, I should now move into the land development space. So that's what we're seeing. And I think that's why a lot of people are really interested in it.
Makes a lot of sense because, we have sometimes investors, someone, just finished a project, but even someone will call and say, hey, I would like to get all my money out and be cash flowing. It's like, well, we don't have that ability right now. Here's what you can get back from your buy, renovate, refinance. But because you're not adding enough value to it, maybe you're only doing a duplex, like that whole, when everybody's greedy, be fearful. It's like everybody's going in that space now. So it feels
Yes.
like it's really a tough space. And to look at those big lots and to rip down an old house to build another unit for another 500 grand, you know what I mean? Like it just seems like you're using better use of that space by looking at changing the use of it. And Alfonso do, for example, the new multifamily developments, right? The apartments, I see those all on the YouTube as well. So when someone's going through that process, how does it, I know every city's different and whatnot. How does it work when it comes to changing the zoning? For example, we had a seller that was interested in potentially selling a 5 acre property in West Kitchener in a great area near the highway, but kind of farmland. But likely is not zoned to have 30 townhomes, for example, or a building. How does that work? How does that process all work? Like with your planner, do you talk about it to take up maybe a year process, and then you go and do you do like a syndication with people to fund these? Like, I'm just curious. This is really something I wanted to know.
Yeah. So first off, you have to figure out if the municipality has an appetite for it. That's number one, because you're talking about 5 acres agricultural land. It's probably sounds like it's not in the urban core. It's probably in the outskirts. Is there servicing there? So you might want to put all of this development there, and or a seller may want landowner may want to think, oh, this is a great area. It's 5 acres. I should be able to put that. But also having the understanding that not every land is developable. Not every land has the capacity to sustain what you're hoping to accomplish. So if there are no municipal services to that property, it's probably going to be hard to get the buy-in for a much denser project. But maybe it allows instead for a few houses to be built on that 5 acres based on the amount of capacity that the land has. Because if you're looking at rural areas, non-municipal service land, that would mean then that you're on private services. So if you're on private services, you're probably going to be on well and septic. So there's that balance. So that's number one, looking at it in that viewpoint. Does it even make sense? Could I even really develop this land? But once you get over that and you figure, okay, maybe there is some services that I can bring in, or it does make sense to have private services here. Now going and creating the concept, creating the idea, and figuring out, does the city have any appetite? And the only way to really figure that out is one, looking at the city's official plan to see if there's anything in there that they see growth in these outskirt areas, or specifically in the area that you're looking at. But two, going and presenting this proposal to the city as a pre-consultation meeting through a pre-consultation meeting, and then figuring out, are they going to be supportive of it or not? So it all comes down to what the zone allows. Is there enough capacity? Does the official plan state anything that can indicate there's a potential for development here? And lastly, would the city approve it?
Okay, so it seems like you're seeing if the city has an appetite. So you may not put the property under contract until you understand the city's appetite in the area, where the services are, zoning matters as well. And then after that, looking at a pre-consultation meeting, so like a proposal to see if this is something that's going to work, to then decide to buy the property and make that project work. Is that right?
You're correct. Yes, you
Okay.
got it.
So when you're coaching, so let's say you're coaching your students through that, do you guys have sort of a mastermind community where you put your funds together and go on these bigger projects and all present these projects to each other and say, okay, I have this property. This is what I think I could do. What do you think the steps are? What can I build on it? What's the cost per build? How's this going to work for the returns? Can we all get on it? How's that work with your community? I'm just curious. That's really interesting.
Oh, so there's two separate things. When I mentioned my land development mastermind, that's actually part of my coaching business.
Okay.
So that's more of an educational platform. It really is a completely educational platform. So normally, I'll create a educational piece. I mentioned to you, I really teach about experience from experience. So normally my teaching is literally something that I'm going through. Live case studies is what the students really love. Or I may even put in a student who is already undertaking their first project and analyzing it with the team, with the whole group, so that we can see the insights of projects and uncover what they look like. So that's a completely educational platform for my land development students. So that's number one. But in terms of capitalizing a project for my business and what we do, yes, so we do definitely fund our projects through OPM, so other people's money. We also put our own money into every single deal. There's never been one deal that we have not. In fact, when we first began our land development journey, my husband and I only used our own resources, our own money, our own everything. And I like doing that because I made a lot of mistakes. I really was just kind of throwing myself to the wolves and figuring things out. But it allowed me to do it on my own. And at the same time, not knowing, because at the time I didn't know about OPM. I literally had no idea about raising capital. It didn't even occur to me that you could raise capital for the real estate. It didn't even know that. And the only time that I actually began was during COVID, because during COVID, everything shut down and everybody was so scared. And then I told my husband, this is the time. We have the opportunity to scale this business and to really obtain a lot of new projects, exciting ones. And that's when I got a coach and he started teaching me about how to raise capital and how to put presentations together and how to even do that. So now we've worked up to a really nice investor pool list. There are exclusive investors. They're part of our community. I also teach them, so I'm become like this teacher all of a sudden, because a lot of our investors invest with us because they want to learn through the process. So it's kind of naturally just evolved that way. But it's fun too, because then they get to see the insights of how things are working internally, and we go through sites and we bring them in and we do all of that kind of fun stuff. So that's with our own investors and our pool of investors. We're constantly growing that, of course, as we're undertaking more subdivisions. It does require a lot more capital and some heavy lifting to happen. But we're really blessed to be in that situation where people know who we are. They're our friends, they're our family, they're people who have grown throughout the years with us. And it's very much almost referral based. A lot of people come to us because they were referred by somebody or somebody else told them. It's very organic the way we've grown our investor pool. And so that's why a lot of people ask me, like, I never see anything on your social media. I don't see any big announcements and things like that. I'm not a big social media person.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And it's not because it's not good. It's just it's just not my priority. My priority is my team, what I do every single day, communicating like this. I love this. What you and I are doing, communicating, talking to each other, adding to each other's lives right now, that is what I love. And I don't really get that from my social media experience. So I think that's probably why I don't really focus on it too much. But that's what it is. It's just so organic in everything that we've done.
That's excellent. It seems like, and obviously too, with social media, you're going to get, someone's outsides to someone else's insides. You're not really going to get a whole picture of everything that's happening in someone's project, or the goods, the bads, or what's the ups and downs of things. Like they always say, they show like the amazing part of the transition, but there's no learnings behind it, because there's no, here's what didn't work, or here's what I could have done differently. And I think people are craving that transparency, especially with AI, and craving the relationships. I remember even when you call your clients on their birthday, they're a lot more receptive than just, that social media connection, for example, like having a conversation like this, where we're learning together, I'm learning from you, and this is out for everybody to learn. It's fantastic. And I think that's a great point that you brought up. So
Yeah,
it
I
seems
think
like this platform Oh, sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh, sorry, just one last piece I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
gonna
of
say.
course.
We need to just tell people to pick up the phone and talk
Yes.
more. That's especially I have boys. They're so in their own little like game and stuff, and I feel like I don't want to lose that. It's a big component of being human.
I love that. Well, it seems like you're very intentional in the way you communicate and you add value. And I think the way you show up with your boys, they're seeing that and they're going to model that. So I think that's something you should be really, really proud of. So that's incredible.
Thank
Two real quick things. So one, it seems like your community, you have an educational platform, sort of helps the investors understand what they're investing in. And then you have another platform that's sort of raising funds and showing the returns of certain projects
you.
and what's happening that you're investing in that you're allowing people to buy into. Is that sort of the idea?
Yep, yep, you got it. You got it. That's it.
Okay. Now
Mhm.
with business, how has your business had to pivot when it comes to, you mentioned you use COVID as an opportunity to actually expand and scale. Tell me a little bit about how you've been able to pivot your business through this time as well.
Yeah, so much. I think COVID has brought so much good things actually in a lot of
Yeah.
ways for people, as much as taboo to say, but it,
Yeah.
it
No,
really did like expedite a lot of really good things as well. So um I think it really like personally for me, it really made me come out of my shell more because I was really just like I said, just doing my own thing for a lot of time, the whole time, just doing my own thing, and now really putting it out there for people and showing them what I'm actually doing. Like COVID, I don't know about you or your experience with COVID, but
mm,
I had so many people from all kinds, literally in their 20s to their 50s, just calling me and being like, I've lost my job, or I'm going to lose my job, or I'm having a mental crisis right now. What do I do? And I know you're doing this one thing in real estate, and I don't really know what that is, but can you teach me something, or can you give me a little bit of help? And that for me personally, when you talk about pivot, that was a huge pivot for me as a personal standpoint to just be like, let me step in and see what I can do. And that's what taking that leap of faith a lot of the times, I ended up opening this whole entire new door that I never even thought at the time when I was doing it. But but what I realized, excuse me, I'm getting over a
mm,
cold,
it's okay.
um, is that by actually being more open and just showing people what I'm doing, it inspired all of this whole generation of this group of people who are all of a sudden seeing the possibilities of what they can also do, which that in itself is an amazing feeling to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And through that, it opened up a whole bunch of business opportunities that I never even, again, I could have never foreseen that had I not just been open to the idea of being more open, because I wasn't really at the before COVID. I was in my own little bubble, just doing my own thing, and I was very happy being like a lone wolf, just doing that. But then realized saying, here, I'm going to help, I'm going to bring value. And then little did I know that they're bringing me probably more value than I was bringing to them, which in itself was so amazing. So
Mm,
what ended up happening is so many new opportunities ended up coming in. People coming in and saying, I want to invest with you because I know exactly what you're doing. I people that came in and said, I have a piece of land that I want you to come see. Maybe we could do some kind of partnership, or maybe you want to get into this. Um, or being at an advisory role to a major corporation who now allows me to be a keynote speaker who brings me into their board, where I can have a lot more people see more of who I am, and then more doors open in that respect, just because I'm now in other stages, in other viewpoints where people can see me there. There are so many things, Sam, that just happened that you could have never projected. You could never forecast any of these things to happen. So my business really took off in so many ways. We grew so much during COVID, plainly for that one aspect that I decided to open up myself and teach and provide value to others. So personally wise and business wise, that entire pivot is something that just naturally happened. We also decided to move into the subdivision space, as I mentioned earlier. So that also happened during COVID time. And of course, this kind of snowballed from all of this group of people that I now started belonging to and bringing value to. They were all excited to come in. Let's do our next subdivision project. Let's go in and do this. So now it's almost like I have a group of people that are really tight knit, very tight knit group where we're just all have the same vision and the same love and passion for creating value, and we're all coming together to make that happen. And so all of that, Sam, is just something that like literally I could have never
Wow.
expected.
So when you say it also like it forced you to sort of get out of your shell, do you find that you had to start, people reached out to you and they needed to be inspired and you needed to sort of live out that value of contribution to help them? Or did you find that just that way of communicating, it just came naturally that you started going on platforms and discussing what you're doing and
Uh,
what you're learning?
yeah, no, like going to this, the thought of speaking in public, to be on stage, to be up there, the one where everybody's has their eyes on and looking at. If you would have asked me 3 years ago, can you come on stage? And if you would have invited me to your podcast, it's going to be, I would have been like, no, I'm not. There's no way I'm doing that. I am the most fearful in public speaking you could ever imagine. And that's probably a big reason why I was so happy just being in my own little bubble and doing my own thing. And all of our projects have been entirely our projects. I don't work for anybody else. It's just our projects that we decide. So you can see how you can feel comfortable in that space. You're just
Yes.
doing it on your own, which is in itself a true blessing to be in, right?
Mhm.
But then having people say, no, come, show us. We want to hear from you. We want you to come and answer some questions or be our guest speaker or whatever it is. And being on the stage, that for me was the most extremely excruciating experience. I would have rather died some days than go on stage. Like that's how much, right?
Yeah.
The fear is real.
Yeah.
So I had to really learn how to do that. And I actually got coaches to teach me how to bring stories to life, how to even explain stories, how do I communicate effectively, how do I move on stage, Sam? Like, because I was so scared, I was like this, I was just like, I would not move, and I was like a robot, like I'm just literally paralyzed trying to say
Right.
words, and I
Right.
couldn't even remember what I had just said. So I had no
Yeah.
idea where I was ending the sentence with. That's how bad it was, Sam. Like so bad. And then eventually it's just through practice. It was
Yeah.
just literally putting myself out there. I have videos of me for the very first times, and it's excruciating to watch. It's terrible. And now I go on stage and people are like, oh my God, you're such a natural. You're my favorite speaker to listen to. And
Yeah.
I came here, people fly in to come watch me speak because they know I'm going to be speaking at that event. And that is so amazing to hear because that is a huge growth experience for me in the last 2-3 years of being able to do that. That is like amazing for me to be able to do that.
Yeah, it shows. I mean, and you spoke with Wealth Genius and those events and adding a ton of value for their group. And it definitely seems like you're inspiring a lot of people. A lot of people really want to know what you're doing and how to pivot in this space and understand how to make their investments work in that area as well, at whatever area they're doing land development in. So it definitely seems like obviously you're very successful right now. When it comes to some principles you teach in your speeches when you're talking on stage, what are some things that you teach your students? It could be success principles, or it could be things to inspire them, or things that they need to take away when are there certain common themes that you like to share?
That's a really, really good one, Sam. That's a good question. There's so many things. I think if I had to leave here your podcast with just maybe a couple of items, one of the principles that I like to teach for the students is to buy it, whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's flipping, burring, land development, multifamily, buy it for what it is. I think that the issue is that in the land development world, people get excited that they see the potential of a property, me included, by the way. I get so excited in the space, but one thing I've learned throughout the years is that I want to buy it for what it is. So if it's a bungalow that the land has development potential, but it's a bungalow that you're buying it, buy it for that bungalow. Do not overpay. Do not over forecast or think, well, I can do a 60-unit apartment building here. And that's the problem where a lot of sellers are also thinking, oh, my property is close to transit, or it's been redesignated, or the guy next door just built something, so mine must be worth a lot more. But the issue is that there's a lot of unknowns that you will discover throughout your way. And so you have to leave the space and the gap for all of these unknowns to be discovered throughout the journey. And the only way to have enough gap is to make sure that you buy it for what it is. Do not overpay, just buy it for what it is. Ideally undervalue is always great. And so that's one of like my key principles for every student, anybody that I talk to, just buy for what it is. Don't overpay. I've seen properties are $5 million. Why? Just because there's going to be a high-rise apartment building, but you don't really know. There's still a lot of work to be done in order to get that high-rise apartment building, or whatever the case might be. So buy it for what it is. Number two, I think is the biggest question that I get all the time is, how do you do your due diligence? How do you know it's the right project and all this kind of stuff? One thing I've learned throughout my whole experience in the land development journey is we have a very good list of due diligence items. I mean, if I had to count, it's probably 30 or 40 different items that we check, and between the numbers and reports and studies and all these kind of due diligence pieces. But there's always going to be unknowns. Like you will never know absolutely everything. You won't. It just won't happen. And there's some people that want to know absolutely everything before they can make a decision. And I understand that completely, but just know that you will never know everything. Just like as if, Sam, if you were to go buy that 40-unit apartment building or 30-unit apartment building, you're going to do all the checks. You're going to check everything. You're going to check the numbers. You're going to check the water meters. You're going to check the furnaces. You're going to check, but there's always going to be something that you will uncover that you have never ever, you could have never realized at the beginning. So there's so many unknowns, and so just trust the process. Trust the process that at least if you've done your numbers correctly at the beginning and you've left enough gap in there for all of those unknowns, you will be okay as long as you're doing it properly in the upfront. So a lot of people come to me, I'm so scared, I'm so fearful. I get it, but just know that you're never going to know everything, and it's just impossible. But at least trust the process. Trust that you followed the plan, that you followed all the numbers, that you know exactly what you're getting into, and there's enough gap in there so that in the case that something does not go exactly right, you've at least put that buffer in at the beginning, and you know that you're going to be okay. And that's, as a coach, as anybody who's ever held anybody's hand through a process, we all go through this, all of us, every single person. I still go through this. And then the third one that I do, one of my key principles is very much, I always tell everybody this, I am the least smartest person in my team. And it's actually by design. So anybody who's read the Napoleon Hill, book, that's the entire principle around it. And it's just get over yourself. There's no ego here. I love staying in what I love to do, and my team are experts at what they do. And so that also touches on the unknowns, because there's always going to be something that I don't know, but I do know this. I know that my team is a top stellar team. I know that they know what they're doing. And I know that no matter what happens, they're going to figure out a way. because they are top. So that's all I have to know. That gives me the confidence and the assurance and the strength to keep going in times when you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know everything. I'm really scared. I don't know what I'm doing. Whenever that fear takes on, what gives me the confidence is knowing I've done my proper due diligence and I have a stellar team that I know can figure it out. All of us together, we can figure it out and make those changes necessary. So that's been my journey. That's what I share a lot of the times. And it really is that every day, all day.
No, I really like that a lot. I think there's a lot of gems in there, especially with, buying it for what it is. Understand the buffer, the due diligence. There's always unknowns, and account for that. So then it gives you more confidence, and you have a community, like you said, that can help guide you through that, especially with they haven't done it before. So are you speaking with mostly, and we'll just kind of end out at this, but I know you've been in the space for a bit, balancing, having kids and family with your business and being a woman in the space, which you're breaking through and you're, very powerful woman in this space. What obstacles have you found, and how are you kind of overcoming them day by day when it comes to, family life and business and so forth?
Yeah. I think realizing that there's not really a balance is
Yeah.
number
There's
one.
counterbalance. Yeah.
We're trying so hard to have like this balanced
Yeah.
life, but in reality, I kind of threw that
Yeah.
out at
Yeah.
some point. I was like, there really is no balance in
No.
reality, right? In what we do. Um, I think for a lot of like being a mom, especially, and running a business and growing a business, scaling it, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing I have found in my experience because there is a lot of you're our kids need us. Like let's be real, right? Like there's a mother and a father, but a lot of the times the children need the mother a lot. I
Mhm.
would say in a lot of different ways that they don't need daddy for.
Gotcha.
And it's tough to be a mom. Like I have felt it so much, especially in the last 5 years, growing the business and not feeling like I'm not there for my children as much as
Mm.
I should be is definitely big. So one thing that I've learned, one is like I said, no balance, but also I've been I have gotten better at communicating with my boys about what I'm doing that day. So a lot of the things that I incorporate is I just said, instead of telling them that mommy's busy, let me just add them. They're going to come in with me and do all the things. Because when I first started, I was bringing my baby, like he was in like a little baby basket,
Yeah.
like the car thing.
The baby
And
Catan kind of thing. Yeah, I know those things.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I would just bring him with me to meetings and things like that because he was a baby and there was no daycare for babies. So
Mhm.
I would just bring him and do all that. And then I started that way. And then I kind of lost that because you get so busy and I'm running around like a crazy maniac, but then also trying to rush to get back home to be with the boys and all this kind of stuff. So now I just completely changed my script and I said, no, no, it's just going to be what I had started from the beginning. I'm just going to bring them along
Mhm.
no matter what. I bring them through the site. We, they're part of some of their
Yeah.
conversations. In the mornings when we wake up and we say, okay, what's going on for you today? And they're like, I have this soccer and I have jiu-jitsu and I have this going on. I have a dictate at school. I have that. And then I'll say, okay, great. So this is what I have going on too. And if there's something really big happening that day, like let's say we have a city meeting and we're going to have a city call and city officials are going to be there and we're going to be talking to them, I tell them all about it. And then when they get home, they're like, so what happened? And I'm like, okay, so this happened. And we go through all of those things together. Like when I'm looking at a property and I literally print out the entire site and I'm like, let's draw out. What do you guys think? Should we do this kind of thing over here? Should we do that? Should we do that? And now they're part of it. It's like the whole script has changed. And of course it helps because they're growing, getting bigger. They have ideas and thoughts and things like that. And so it obviously gets easier. So I want to be that parent. I want to be that parent that includes them, empowers them to have thoughts, to have ideas. We bounce ideas. I respect their ideas, they respect mine, and we just kind of do that. So that has really helped me a lot throughout this journey, because for a long time I was just running around like a maniac, and then I have this guilt feeling, as a parent. And then I realized, no, no, it's okay. It's okay, because they know exactly what I'm doing, and they know that we'll have our time together as well. So that has helped me a lot.
I really like that because like there really is no like the balance is kind of a lie, right? It's all the counterbalance. If you can integrate your kids into your life as well in your business, as well as focus on business and then focus on family as well. But there's that counterbalance. And I think you're totally right. It makes a ton of sense. Well,
Mhm.
Carina, it's been really great to connect with you. And you're obviously a great speaker and shared a lot of great stories with us and a lot of takeaways from land development, how to get started, what are some things that mistakes people make, why it's important. A lot of takeaways, probably even more takeaways in another conversation. Is there anything, first of all, how can people get started in the space and reach you? We'll have your information in there. And is there any couple things that people should know about land development that you'd like to share that you haven't already?
So yes, definitely do not make assumptions if you're looking to get into land development. Do not assume that just because your neighbor was approved or is doing something, or somebody across the street, that you'll be able to do the same. So really reach out to the experts, whether that looks like an architect in the area or an urban planner in the area, or at the very least, contact the city planning office to confirm the zone, and confirm what the zone allows for you to do, and also what it does not allow you to do, because some zones also have very specific things that you are not allowed to do. You have no idea, Sam, how many people have reached out to me and said, I bought this property, I want to do this, and all of a sudden I look over it and it's like an entire floodplain zone in the back. And the floodplain zone is non-buildable. You cannot do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that happen all the time. Or it's unserviced land. And here they're thinking I'm going to do a full development. And I'm like, no, it's too small to do 1 acre developments, but it's not serviced. So you can only maybe put 1 or 2 houses on it at most. So
Mhm.
so you have to do the checks. So at the very least, contact the planning department in the area that you're looking at. And then number two, contact experts, right? So do not make any assumptions. Um, and think I read the zoning and it's going to allow me to do that. No, there's more to it than just that. So contact them. In order to reach me, you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's probably one of the easiest ways to contact me. I do have my Instagram page. I don't always go and look at it. So the best way is LinkedIn for sure, if anybody wanted to reach me.
Okay, great. So if they're looking to get some help, some guidance, some education, this will be a great spot as well as an investor community. So amazing, Carina. It's been really
Absolutely.
great having a conversation with you today. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge and it's been great connecting with you.
Thank you so much, Sam. It was a pleasure being here with you today. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Have a great one.